Our presenter today is Jeff Gorter. Jeff is the Vice President of Crisis Response Clinical Service with R3 Continuum, with over 29 years of clinical experience in behavioral health consultation and extensive on-site critical incident response to businesses and communities. Jeff directly responded to the September 11th terrorist attacks, Hurricane Katrina, Virginia Tech shootings, Deepwater Horizon oil spill, the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, Sandy Hook, Orlando, and Las Vegas tragedies, just to name a few. Jeff regularly trains and presents on a variety of behavioral health topics and currently serves as an adjunct faculty member at Western Michigan University's MSW graduate program. Thank you for being with us here today, Jeff.
Thank you, Shane.
We have a lot to go over in just a quick 30 minutes. So, Jeff, I'm going to hand this over to you. And can you start us off by giving us kind of a review on stress in general and how it breaks down a little bit?
Sure. No, thank you. And thank you all of you for joining this webinar. And obviously, you know, what we've all been through over the last 2.5 years, I mean, it's clear that stress is a reality. Stress has been here and it's been ubiquitous. It's been everywhere all the time. And so we've become almost accustomed to stress as if it's become our sort of default position. And so, but what I wanted to look at today is to recognize that when we think about stress, when we talk about stress, sometimes we think of it as if it is a single state that we all experience in exactly the same way. But for many people, it's surprising to find out that there are different varieties of stress, different kinds in different contexts. And that the more that we know about the kind of stress, the more about how we know where it comes from and what it happens and what we can do about it, that empowers us to make different choices, better manage that in ways that are more effective and unique to each of us, as we'll find out. So I want to look at, let me just advance. You know, the question, you know, that's kind of obvious, is all stress equal? And what we find out is that there are different kinds. And the first stress I want to talk about is what's called eustress, or good stress, as it's sometimes called. So there is a stressful situation, but we view it as a challenge. We view it as something that we have to rise to the occasion, we have to rise to. And in those circumstances, in that kind of stress, the body and mind are working in sync. Think about an Olympic athlete or an elite athlete who is performing at that highest level. And, having just watched the Winter Olympics just a couple of months ago, when I think about the incredible speed, the incredible skill, the risk that they're taking, obviously, hugely stressful situations, but these individuals have found a way to challenge and direct that stress in a way so that it increases their focus and their energy. It, in fact, powers them to do things that we might not have ever thought possible. It enhances and sustains their performance for those periods of time. So it's not that all stress is bad. There is a good stress as well. The next stress, though, and this is the one that I think we more typically think of, distress. And that's where we view the stressful situation, it's viewed as a threat. And as a result, it triggers a raw survival reaction within us. It triggers that part, and I'm going to dive into that a little bit more in just a moment, but we view it as a literal threat to our survival. Whether we think of it that way or not, the parts of our brain that are hardwired to respond to it do. They see this as something big, something threatening, and so the body reacts in automatic ways and it overrides the mind. There is a release of chemicals, adrenaline that we think about and other neurotransmitters that kind of prepare you for this survival situation. And while it's good from a survival standpoint, it tends to impede your performance, particularly in a workplace type setting. And so, when we think about it, I mentioned that survival mechanism. So it's a simple analogy that I've used before. Imagine that you're an ancient tribes person, you're walking through the woods, out jumps a bear. Now, when the bear jumps out, you've got to make some pretty instantaneous choices. Your body reacts in a way to prepare you. It floods you with the adrenaline and everything, and you've got to make one of three choices. You look at it and you say, can I take this thing? Can I beat that bear? Fight. Am I going to be faster than the bear? Flight. Should I run away? Or do I freeze and hope it doesn't see me? But either way, you can see that one of these three reactions is going to be instrumental in your survival and makes perfect sense in that kind of context. Now, the trouble is our bodies are still sort of hardwired to respond that way. Again, the central parts of our brain react in that way. It's even called the primitive brain stem, the part that controls that. And so it provides us with everything we need for survival. The trouble is, most of the things we face today, most of the stressful situations, aren't ones that we're going to be able to fight, run away from, or hope it goes away on its own. And so we have different choices we have to make. Now, there are two sort of sub-variations, different variations of stress that I wanted to look at. And one is what's called cumulative stress. And that's where prolonged stress or repeated stress or multiple stressors over a period of time begin to stack up, and it begins to wear the system down. It begins to slowly drain us of energy, and we're not designed, as it were, to have that those neurochemicals running at full speed all the time for a long period of time. But the thing is that cumulative stress is where it's like, well, it's just one stacked on another. And so it's easy to miss or to dismiss in ourselves, to say, oh, it's not too bad. I think I can manage this. But one of the hallmarks is that when we are at that rushing with those chemicals over a long period of time, it begins to break us down physically. Our immune systems begin to break down. And in fact, there's estimates that 70 to 80% of illnesses that we contract, things like chronic fatigue, irritable bowel, fibromyalgia, other migraines, other situations where we have sort of chronic illnesses, are often related to that high intensity of stress, or a low intensity of stress, but just stacking one on the other. And the little frog there is, many of you have heard this old analogy, but way back in the day when I think researchers could do such things, I'm not sure if it's allowed now, but there was research that discovered that if you put a frog in a pot of hot water, it would immediately jump out in the service of its own survival. Makes sense. But if you put a frog in a pot of tepid water and slowly turned it up degree by degree by degree, he would happily swim around until he was frog soup. And the point being that the same kind of analogy, that can be a metaphor for us, that so often we think, no, yeah, it's a little bit hotter, but I can take it. It's a little bit hotter, I can take it. And we don't acknowledge or manage the situation in a way that that gets us out of the hot water, metaphorically, and we end up paying the price physically most often. And then the last variation is something that it's called secondary traumatic stress, and it's something that certain professions are more likely to experience it. It's still something that is less common. It's the less common type of stress, but it's something that those who are typically in a helping profession, like fire service, law enforcement, EMTs, frontline healthcare workers, like in emergency departments or ICUs, the NICU, PICU, those who are working with children, infants that are at risk, as well as organizations that are around social services, like child protective services and victim assistance groups. Exactly. So again, those helping professions that frequently respond to other people's trauma. They are there helping other people who have gone through difficult times. And frequent exposure to other people's trauma, even if I am myself not physically threatened or experience, a survival challenge like we talked about before, but repeated exposure to others' trauma can create what's a kind of compassion fatigue, where I simply become weary in the face of other people's pain, other people's trauma. I get tired, and it changes my perception in that situation, where I become almost a change in the way that a helper interacts. They become more withdrawn. I mean, people are drawn to those fields typically because they're people persons, because they like to help other people. And a key warning sign is, I'm kind of isolating, I'm pulling back, I am not getting the joy of being with others like I used to. Those somatic complaints, physical complaints that I talked about before, beginning to feel fatigue, I'm beginning to have muscle tightness, I'm beginning to have gastrointestinal issues, like those physical signs of breakdown. And a hallmark is the cynicism, where it's like I become sort of jaded, and I view the world in a negative or kind of almost toxic way, and where I begin to blame the victim, where I begin to be angry at, well, how could they not see this coming? Why didn't they take better steps to take care of themselves? And even though I'm in a helping profession, I begin to view those I'm trying to help through a negative lens. And those are early hallmark signs that secondary traumatic stress is beginning to take a toll.
Hey, Jeff,
Now,
before we move on, I do have a quick question.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I couldn't cut in quick enough. But before we move on here, so it sounds like a lot of these kind of like the hallmarks to this kind of disruption and compassion fatigue. Like you mentioned, we've seen it a lot with first responders, but especially over the last 2 years, healthcare workers, nurses, things like that. We've heard that everybody is just exhausted and tired. Compassion fatigue, is that the same thing as, say, burnout, or is it a little bit different?
That's a great question, because there is a differentiation to that compassion fatigue is the early warning signs, again, where I'm weary in the face of helping others, in the face of other people's pain. Burnout is when that cynicism, that negative frame that I begin to view it through, if that goes unaddressed, if that continues to build, then it leads to burnout, which is to say, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I cannot muster up the energy to come in and do this. And so it leads those in helping positions to do job changes, career changes, to drop out of the profession that they had so rigorously trained for. And so compassion fatigue is sort of that first warning sign. And if addressed, like with cumulative stress, if addressed appropriately, can be managed. But if it's unattended and it's like, nope, this is what we just got to do, I got to just keep pulling through, we can take it, I can do another shift, I can add another double, I can do more, and that ends up leading to burnout and an unnecessary career change. So you're right, it's kind of like, say, a spectrum. The lightest version of it would be compassion fatigue, and the most extreme version would lead to burnout and a complete change. Excellent questions. Yeah. Which kind of gets to the point that, so if there's 4 different types of stress, if there's different types of stress, what is fascinating, and what I really want you to take away from this is that, interestingly enough, the body doesn't differentiate between these different variations. The body doesn't know. The reaction the body has between distress and eustress is pretty much the same. That adrenaline flush, the increased heart rate, the increased blood flow to the large muscle groups, all of that is the same, whether it's good stress or bad stress. The body's doing what the body does to face this challenge. The key here, research has shown that the mind does. The mind differentiates. And by that, I mean, research has shown there is um, physiological cognitive changes that occur in the brain based on what's called locus of control. And locus of control means how much agency do I perceive myself to have in this situation? How much ability to influence it, to make choices, to take steps to affect this situation? And so if I have a high level locus of control, if I believe that I can do something, that leads to literal physiological changes in your body and in your mind. So it comes down to this: the event is the event. The stress is the stress. That's not changing. The event is the event, but the interpretation I bring to it, what meaning I attribute to it, makes all the difference. So again, the event happens, and if I say to myself, okay, this was a difficult situation, but where it goes from here is up to me. I believe I can make this is something that is worth the fight, and I think I can make a difference in this. Or do I say, here it is, yet another horrible thing, following a whole bunch of other horrible things. There's no point in this. I can't make any difference. What are my efforts going to amount to? There's a point, an inflection point, it's called. An inflection point where we have to make a decision about what meaning we put on this. Do we say, okay, yes, this was painful, but I am filled with hope that we can get through this? Or do I say, this was painful and I bet more is coming, and I have a sense of despair, a sense that it's never going to get better? Do I have a sense of satisfaction that, okay, my efforts can make a difference and the choices I make right now are worth making? Or do I say, I throw up my hands, I am I'm just a soccer ball on the field of life, and I just get kicked around, and it doesn't really matter what I do or don't do. And again, you see, the meaning is what makes the difference. It's not that the event is somehow different. It's the event is the event, but that moment where I make a decision about how do I interpret this? What does this mean about myself or my family or my company or my country? That when I attribute a more positive meaning, the sense that I believe I can make a difference, it takes me in one direction. If I feel there's no point, I can never get through this, it'll never get better, that takes me in a different direction. And it's neither one is a foregone conclusion. It all comes down to the interpretation that we have on it. And what is so fascinating, I think, is that it comes down to the power of belief, because research has shown it's not as if, see, I didn't want this to be a stress management presentation that says, here are the top 10 things you need to do to manage your stress. We've all seen those. There's lots of those out there. And I am going to give you some ways, some suggestions on how to manage the stress. So I'm not being pejorative in that. But what research has shown is that it's not the coping skills that individuals have or don't have that's important. What counts are the coping skills they believe they have or not. There are 1,000 different ways to manage stress to the degree that you believe you can. And it's not as if there are some, 10 FDA approved, stress management things, and these are the only ones you should do. No, each of us has our own unique set of life experiences, of resources, of talents, and ways that we can respond to stress if we believe we can. That, as simple as that sounds, that is incredibly profound, and that's what makes the difference. So there are some things that we can do that can help enhance that. So it begins with, I can't change what I don't know. I need to be mindful. I need to pay attention to what my body is saying. So again, that physical reaction. Am I tightening up? Am I walking around with my, with my fists unconsciously clenched because I'm ready for that fight response? Or, Am I feeling like I could jump out of my skin and run out of the room every moment because I'm in that flight mode? What is my body telling me? I need to pay attention to that in order to regain some control. And what is my mind saying? What's my internal dialogue, as it were? What am I saying? Am I saying, okay, this is rough, but I think we can do it? Or am I saying, this is overwhelming and there's no way I can make a difference, and why even try? Again, that internal dialogue, the meaning, what meaning am I applying to this? Because that will influence my trajectory either up or down from here. So I need to pay attention to what my body's saying. I need to pay attention to what my mind is saying. And I need to pay attention to what's going on around me. Again, we are talking about this in a workplace setting. And so rarely are we alone. I am part of a work group. I am part of a team. I am part of a company, or I'm part of a community. And so I don't have to view it as if I'm doing it alone. I can begin to tap into the resources and the common strength that we have as a team, as a work team, a work group, or as a company. And I can begin to look at how are we pulling together. I can notice those small moments when we're rising above it, and I can celebrate the victories step by step. Not that we make it all go away in one fell swoop, but that we take it step by step, and I am part of a group that is moving towards that. That can reduce the sense that it's all up to me all the time. It isn't. And then finally, getting back to the basics. Again, the stress management techniques are not rocket science. It's things that we can do if we stop and take care of the basics, like making sure that we are getting regular food, staying hydrated, trying to maintain sleep schedules as best we can, because stress is physically exhausting. It drains you of energy. And if I don't take care of the basics, managing those kinds of things, including exercise, I'm going to become exhausted. And that just hampers my ability to manage it or to make better decisions about it. And for a lot of people, we've all said this, well, I tried this. I tried exercise and it didn't work. I tried meditation. I didn't say, it didn't help. I tried, prayer for those who follow a faith perspective. I tried it and it just didn't work. Well, what we typically mean by that is I tried it once and it didn't work. So I moved on to something else, which means that I've put myself on a constantly rotating trial and error process, as if there is one big magic answer. There is no one specific answer. What I need to do, it's what's called the rule of 7, which is to say, researchers have again found that if I want to make something effective, if I want to have it be a true part of my stress management system, the rule of 7 says that if I do something 7 times, I have gained familiarity. So let's say I'm talking about, exercise. I want to go for a walk. I commit to say I want to go for a walk, several times a week. Now I need to go for a walk 7 times to gain familiarity with how that feels and how that fits into my life and my schedule. I need to do it another 7 times to have mastery, where I'm beginning to get into a groove, and I feel like this is beginning to, I have a greater understanding of how to incorporate this into my stress management. I need to do it another 7 times for it to become part of my routine, to become something that I go to reflexively without thinking, as opposed to it being something that I have to make a conscious effort to do. And so whatever the stress management activity that you're going to do, mindfulness, prayer, journaling, walking, doing a craft, engaging in something else, whatever it is, I have to get past the idea that, well, I tried it once and it didn't work. What you have to do is commit to doing it basically 21 times. The rule of 7 says but I need to do it 7 to get familiar, another 7 to get mastery, another 7 to incorporate it as part of my routine. But if I can commit to doing that, I'm going to have much more benefit from those activities, and they can be small activities, little things. But if I commit to doing it 21 times, it becomes part of my repertoire and how I handle it. So again, whatever it is, whether it's exercise, meditation, prayer, journaling, whatever, I need to do it in a regular basis to really have any benefit. And then finally, something that is, again, part of COVID is for those of us who are working remotely, for those of us who perhaps didn't work remotely before, but now find myself in a long-range plan where that's going to be the case, controlling what you can control, minimizing the disruptions. We've all kind of become accustomed to, and we all sort of laugh and have a knowing nod and a knowing grin when a dog starts barking in the background or a cute toddler wanders through in the back. And so that's become a regular part, but I don't think we realize that those are also things that add to our stress. So being able to control what you can control to try and minimize those disruptions, because that just adds to that sense of cumulative stress. And doing those things we can to exert a level of control. Now that we are 2 years into it, we know we can do that in a way that doesn't make it distracting and frustrating and add more to my stress pile. So
I think that final point is incredible, because actually just before we hopped on here, I was looking at my cat out in the living room, and I was like, I could put him in another bedroom and not worry about him at all, or I could just trust that he's going to be a perfect cat. And, and then I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't need that stress to hop on. I could just put him in the other room and not worry about it. So he's locked up for right now. But that was exactly what you were saying, is I literally just wanted to minimize that stress. I didn't think that I needed to add that on. So I think that was a funny point that was very relevant to me right now. Before we hop into a couple questions, we've got 2 or 3 minutes here. I just want to invite everyone to our next webinar on May 25th. That will be titled Empowering Yourself, How You Can Become a Catalyst for Change in the Workplace. And that will feature R3 Continuum's Associate Director of Strategic Solutions, Sarah Hathaway. You can register today using the widgets and tools on the screen. Otherwise, more information will be sent out following this webinar. So like I said, we've got 2 or 3 minutes left here. We've got a couple questions in. We're going to start with this one. Do different personality types approach stress differently?
Yeah, I think, each of us, and that's why I was saying that it would be a mistake to go with the idea that there's a limited list of coping techniques, and they're going to work for everybody. Each one of us comes to it with our own personality type, our own way in which we deal with the world. Again, our lived experiences that inform what how we respond to things. And so there are a wide range of personality types. And that's where, again, that reminding ourselves that it's not specific coping skills that are beyond my reach, or only a few rare people can have these. No, it's about believing that I can manage it, and that once I have that belief, then the various things that I might attempt and try to work into and apply the rule of 7 to have greater effectiveness. So it is true, but each of us comes with our own personality, but I wouldn't want to say that there's certain personalities that just can't manage it. I think that would be a mistake. Now, we may all manage it in different ways, vastly different ways, but it comes down to that belief, that assertive assertion that we can do it.
Excellent. And I know we just hit 12:30 Central Time. So I just have one more question, just because it came in right away near the beginning there. This came in, I think, when you were talking about the, Olympians and their kind of the eustress and then distress, and then looking at kind of like the bear situation. So all of those would probably have something to do with kind of adrenaline Now, do you think you mentioned that our body can't really tell the different types of stress, but our mind can? With the adrenaline side of things, do you think it's typically a positive or a negative thing?
I think it depends on, again, that interpretation, that cognitive interpretation. So if I view this as, okay, this is a challenge, and I think I can rise to the occasion, or do I view it as this is a challenge and it's going to overwhelm me and there's nothing I can do? And we kind of take the sort of Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. We're doomed. We'll never make it. If I come at it with that approach, why then yes, the adrenaline will have a negative impact, because I'm more likely to react in a way that is not helpful and doesn't move me forward or move my team forward in any appreciable way. So the adrenaline can fuel your performance, or it can distract and impede your performance based on that cognitive interpretation, the meaning you apply to it.
All right, right on. Thank you very much. So with that, we just went over 2 minutes over 12:30. So thank you everybody for the couple extra minutes of your time. But kind of the beauty of this is keeping it short and sweet. So with that, we are going to wrap up. As a reminder, you can download today's slide deck on the resources tab up on the page that you're seeing right now. And this webinar will be viewable on demand. So you'll be able to watch this as many times as you'd like in the next coming hours after this is published, and send it out to whoever you would like as well. So like I said, that'll wrap up today's webinar. Thank you everyone for being in the audience today. Thank you, Jeff, for being an awesome speaker. And we hope you have a great remainder of your day.
Thank you all.